My name is Stephen Houck. I'm with the New York State Attorney General's Office, appearing here on behalf of the plaintiff states.
Gail Cleary, also with the New York Attorney General's Office.
David Boies, representing the United States.
Karma Giulianelli from the United States.
Philip Malone for the United States.
Richard Grimm, New York Attorney General's Office.
Priscilla Alvarez, paralegal with the United States.
Dave Heiner with Microsoft Corporation, counsel for defendant.
Richard Urowski, Sullivan and Cromwell, counsel for Microsoft Corporation.
Bill Newcomb, Microsoft Corporation.
Will the court reporter please swear the witness?
Would you raise your right hand, please? You do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this deposition shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Mr. Heiner, I understand you want to make a statement?
Very briefly, just that this deposition is being taken, of course, pursuant to the protective order in the case, and we will exercise our rights under that to have this transcript treated confidentially.
Okay.
We will make the appropriate designations in accordance with the schedule set out in the protective order. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gates, as I've indicated, my name is Steve Houck. I represent the plaintiff states. I'll be examining you first, and I suspect that Mr. Boies, on behalf of the U.S. government, will have some questions for you. I understand from your lawyers you don't want to be here any longer than necessary. I will do my best to accommodate that. If I move too quickly, let me know and I'll slow down. I will be showing you some documents during the course of the deposition, and I may point out to you to speed up the process, the portions of the document pertain to the questions I have, but feel free, if you want to take more time, to read the entire document to get it in context. Also, if you don't understand any of my questions, if they're unclear in any way, let me know, and I will try to make them a little more clear. I understand that you're one of the co-founders of Microsoft, is that correct?
Yes.
When was the company founded?
1975.
And what positions have you held with Microsoft since then?
Partner, chairman, CEO.
What's your present title?
Chairman and CEO.
Have you been deposed before, sir?
Yes.
In other litigations?
I'm sorry?
In other litigations? You've been deposed in other litigated matters where Microsoft was a defendant, is that correct?
I've been deposed in cases where Microsoft wasn't the defendant and in cases where it was the defendant.
Okay, so you understand the deposition process and how that works. Any questions before we proceed into the substance about the procedures?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, are you comfortable with the procedures here? Do you have any questions before we proceed about how the deposition works? You have a right to speak to counsel if you'd like. As I indicated, if you have any clarifications with respect to any of my questions, please ask me. But I assume that you understand the general process since you've been deposed before. With whom have you spoken in preparation for the deposition today? Anyone other than your counsel?
No.
I assume you've reviewed written materials in connection with your preparation for the deposition today? Is that correct?
I was shown some written documents.
Did you review in that connection any documents that were prepared specially to prepare you for this deposition, as opposed to documents that were generated in the normal course of Microsoft's business?
No.
Did you keep any work-related files at home as opposed to the office?
In general,
Yes.
I don't have the filing system at home. I sometimes take paper home, but I don't keep paper there.
Okay. Do you use a computer at home?
Yes, I do.
Do you use that on work-related matters?
Some of the computers I do and some of the computers I don't.
Do you know whether those computers were searched in connection with the document search in this litigation?
Oh, those computers don't have storage.
They don't? But you don't know whether the hard disk was searched for any material that might be there?
You should understand it's a portable computer, moves back and forth. That's the computer with my email, moves back and forth. So it's the same computer in my office as at home.
Okay. All right. And I assume the computer in your office was searched for relevant emails. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. I gather from time to time you give interviews to the press. Is that right?
Yes.
During those interviews, does anybody from Microsoft or Microsoft's PR firm take notes or record remarks that you make to the press?
Sometimes they do, most times they don't.
Who would be responsible for doing that at Microsoft when that's done?
Well, if there's nobody in the meeting, then no one. If there's, usually it would have to be somebody who was actually present.
Correct. Is there somebody in the Microsoft PR department that's responsible for making notes or recordings of interviews you give to the press?
I said if there's someone in the meeting, then they can choose to do so.
Yeah, I understand that.
There's no particular person who comes to those meetings. Sometimes there's no one in those meetings, sometimes there's someone in the meeting.
Yes, I understand. When there is somebody there, who undertakes to take notes or make recordings of your remarks?
The person who's there.
And who has that been in the past? Can you identify any specific people that have done that?
Well, I wouldn't know all their names. Sometimes Mitch Matthews might be in interviews. Sometimes Katie Erling was in when I talked to an analyst once. Marion Allison, not in the last few years. Melissa Wagner, maybe 15 years ago. Pam Edstrom. Dean Katz, Collins Hemingway. I won't remember everyone who ever sat in an interview with me.
Okay. Have you had any communications with anyone from a company outside Microsoft with respect to whether or not somebody from that company might testify at the trial of this matter?
No.
So are you familiar with the Microsoft Press Computer Dictionary?
No.
You've never cracked it open before?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll introduce you to it. I have here the Microsoft Press Computer Dictionary. It's the third edition, dated 1997. And it says, claims to be the authoritative source of definitions for computer terms, concepts, and acronyms from the world's most respected computer software company. I'll give you a softball question. Would you agree that Microsoft is the world's most respected computer software company?
Some people would agree with that, some people wouldn't.
What's your opinion?
I think we are the most, if you took it on a statistical basis, yes, we'd be the most respected software company.
This computer dictionary defines operating system as follows. The software that controls the allocation and usage of hardware resources such as memory, central processing unit, time, disk space, and peripheral devices. Is that an accurate definition of an operating system?
Well, the notion of what's in an operating system has changed quite a bit over time. So that, that definition is not really complete in terms of how people think of operating systems in the last decade or so.
So that this definition in the 1997 dictionary is incomplete in your estimation?
No, what I said is that over time, the number of things that are in operating systems has increased. And so if you want to look at operating systems in the last decade, you'd say the definition is incomplete.
Okay. Is it accurate? Let me read it to you again. The software that controls the allocation and usage of hardware resources such as memory, central processing unit time, disk space, and peripheral devices.
I said in terms of operating systems in the last decade, it's an incomplete definition.
In what respects is it incomplete?
There are aspects of the operating systems of the last decade that aren't included in that definition.
Okay, what aspects?
But do you want to, I mean, there's a long answer to that question. Shall we go through them all?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, typically, the way people interact with computers now is on a graphical basis. And so the constructs that relate, for example, to fonts are now, in the last 10 years, a typical part of the operating system. For example, the idea of how you take a font and render it at different sizes, whether you have descenders, how you deal with ligatures, how you deal with, say, Arabic elision, how you deal with kanji characters or Hangul characters. And so there's a font rasterizer and a set of font resources and a set of font substitution algorithms that are included in the computer, so that when people write applications that run on top of that computer, they can call on those resources in order to render the glyphs on the computer screen. And there's a lot of utility software that relates to the management of those fonts.
Did you have your answer?
No. No. Another thing that's typical in operating systems of the last decade is a set of utilities for managing the disk space that's on the computer, dealing with backup, dealing with being out of memory, dealing with security aspects of managing the disk there. And so the various utility programs help you make sure the disk is being used for the most recent information. They help you archive that information in a variety of ways. So that's something that's been in operating systems over the last decade. Also, operating systems have a shell-type function that is a way of interacting with the user to navigate through the informational resources. Actually, it's more than a decade that's been a typical inclusion in the operating system. Do you want me to keep going on?
Yeah, finish your answer, and then I'll ask you another question. Let me know when you're done.
Okay. There's enough things here that I doubt I'll be able to hit them all, but I'll hit another set of them. It's typical in terms of interacting with the user to have some sort of facility for helping the user. That is, if the user's confused about the commands, which utility to use and what to do, it's typical now to have something where they can give some sort of ask for help, and help will come up onto the computer screen and be displayed in order to let them interact. It's also typical now not just to map the low-level hardware, but also to have very high-level graphics support that's even independent of what's in the hardware that's there. It's typical to have remote booting capabilities so that you can get the operating system. It can come across the network. It's typical to have things that relate to viruses that you find in computer systems. Let's see. It's also typical to have, as well as what you think of as disk management utilities, some application type programs that let you go in and show off some of the strengths of that operating system, what's actually available with that system. So for example, if you take a Macintosh, when you get it, it has a variety of little things that you can play around with. It's also typical to have a thing like a control panel. I don't know if you've used that on the Macintosh, but it lets you go in and do things like set the sound settings and set the keyboard settings, the keyboard repeat factor. It's because of the way that operating systems now handle languages, there's a lot of things that have to do with configuring the system in that respect. In the whole area of networking, there's more and more that's being included in operating systems to let people get out and do things, including often the ability to create electronic mail, receive electronic mail, deal with the system in that fashion.
Is it your testimony that the control panel is part of the operating system?
Objection. What operating system are we talking about?
The Macintosh operating system.
Okay.
They have a control panel that's part of the Macintosh OS, yes.
Is that part of any OS marketed by Microsoft?
No, the Macintosh control panel is actually unique to the Macintosh operating system. It only appears in the Macintosh operating system.
During the course of your answer, you used the word application several times, and let me see if you agree with the definition in the Microsoft dictionary of that term. Application is there defined as a program designed to assist in the performance of a specific task, such as word processing, accounting, or inventory management. Is that an accurate definition, Mr. Gates?
Could you read it again?
Sure. A program designed to assist in the performance of a specific task, such as word processing, accounting, or inventory management.
I'd say it's a pretty vague definition.
Is it accurate as far as it goes?
I'd say it's vague but accurate.
Another term I'm sure we're going to be using throughout the course of the deposition is web browser. And let me read you the definition from your company's dictionary and see if you think that's accurate. Web browser is defined by the Microsoft Computer Dictionary as follows: a client application that enables a user to view HTML documents on the World Wide Web, another network, or the user's computer, follow the hyperlinks among them, and transfer files. Is that accurate?
It's actually describing browsing functionality.
Is it an accurate definition of browsing functionality?
It describes part of what you do when you browse.
What's your definition of a web browser?
I'd say browsing technology is what lets you navigate through. It typically means something that lets you do HTML display and navigation.
Is that what you mean when you use the term web browser?
I'm sorry, could you
Is that what you mean when you use the term web browser?
Well, software that lets you do web browsing is sometimes referred to as a web browser.
And Microsoft has marketed a web browser under the trade name Internet Explorer, is that correct?
We've used the term Internet Explorer to refer to the Internet technologies in Windows, as well as some standalone products we've done.
Let me see if you agree with this definition in the 1997 edition of Microsoft's Computer Dictionary. The definition is of the term Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is defined as follows: Microsoft's web browser introduced in October 1995. Is that an accurate definition of Internet Explorer?
I'm not sure why they say October. I don't think that's right.
When is your recollection that it was introduced?
Well, we shipped Windows 95, including browsing functionality, in August 1995.
Was IE shipped as a standalone product in or about October 1995?
No?
Was it ever shipped as a standalone product?
Well, it depends on what you're referring to. If you're talking about Unix or the Macintosh, we did create a set of bits that stood by themselves and could be installed on top of those operating systems.
When were those versions of IE first marketed?
Certainly not in October 1995.
Apart from the timing issue, would you agree that Internet Explorer is defined here correctly as Microsoft's web browser?
And did you actually read what was in there?
Yeah, I read the first sentence. I could read you the whole thing if you'd like.
Well, it seems strange. If you're trying to use dictionary, you might as well read what it says. Or you could show it to me.
Yeah, well, I'll read it to you and I'll show it to you. You tell me if there's anything else in here you think is inaccurate, okay? The full entry under Internet Explorer reads as follows. Microsoft's web browser introduced in October 1995. Internet Explorer is now available in Windows and Macintosh versions. Later versions provide the ability to incorporate advanced design and animation features into web pages and recognize ActiveX controls and Java applets. Take a look at it and tell me if there's anything else in there you think is inaccurate.
Well, certainly the product we shipped, it was before October 1995, was Windows 95. The browsing functionality we had in it, we've updated quite a bit several times. And so defining Internet Explorer to be what we shipped just on one particular date can't be considered accurate. You have to say that many times we've taken the browsing functionality in Windows, which we refer to as Internet Explorer, and we've updated that functionality. So you can't really pin the definition to a particular date. It's really a brand name we use for those technologies.
Was this definition accurate in 1997 when Microsoft's Computer Dictionary was sold to the public?
I already told you that that reference to October 1995 certainly makes the definition inaccurate.
Yeah, apart from that, is it accurate?
It's not accurate to say that Internet Explorer is defined at a single point in time, that it's one set of bits, because it's a brand that we've used for a set of technologies that have evolved over time. And in that sense, I would take exception to the way that the book that I've never seen there happened to define it.
You've described the web browser as a killer application, haven't you?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. You'd have to show me the context.
Okay. May 22nd, 1996. I'd like to mark as Government Exhibit 1 a memorandum from Mr. Bill Gates to the executive staff dated May 22nd, 1996.
We'd like 3 copies, Mr. Houck. Decided to take it.
Well, fortunately, I have one for the witness. This is yours, Mr. Gates. You can use the original marked by the court reporter, and we'll hand out the keepsake for counsel. We have just one, unfortunately.
Were you not expecting more than one of us on this side of the table?
Well, I expected to have one lawyer being the principal representative of Mr. Gates. If you feel incapable of that, maybe at a break we can make other copies for it.
We're capable of having one, but we'd like to have our side sort of follow
Well, in
along.
the past, I've been at depositions where several DOJ and state representatives have appeared, and we have received just one ourselves from Microsoft. So I've extended you the same courtesy, sir.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like you to look at exhibit number 1, Mr. Gates, right here in front of you. This is a memorandum that purports to be from you to your executive staff dated May 22, 1996, and that attaches, for want of a better word, an essay entitled The Internet PC, which is dated April 10th, 1996. Do you recall writing that essay?
It looks like this is an email, not a memorandum.
Do you recall writing the essay dated April 10th, 1996, entitled The Internet PC?
Yeah, it looks like an essay I wrote. I don't remember specifically, but it does look like something I wrote.
The portion of it I want to refer you to is at the bottom of the first page under the heading called The Latest Killer App. You see that?
I see a heading.
Yes. The first paragraph under that heading reads as follows, quote, "Our industry is always looking for the next killer application, for a category of software that by its utility and intelligent design becomes indispensable to millions of people. Word processors and spreadsheets were the killer applications for business PC starting in 1981. Then the next sentence reads, the latest confirmed killer app is the web browser. Recall writing that, sir?
No.
Do you have any reason to believe you didn't write it?
No.
Can you explain what you meant here by describing the web browser as a killer app?
I just meant that browsing would be, in our view, a popular thing, not necessarily on the web, but just browsing in general would be a popular activity.
Is a killer application an application that drives sales of other products like operating systems and hardware?
No.
Do you have a definition in your own mind of killer application?
It means a popular application.
Let me resort again to the Microsoft Computer Dictionary. I'll read you what that says about killer application. You may disagree with it, if so you can tell me. The Microsoft Computer Dictionary, the 1997 edition, defines killer app as follows. It gives two definitions, and I'll be very complete this time, Mr. Gates. The first definition is an application of such popularity and widespread standardization that it fuels sales of the hardware platform or operating system for which it was written. Do you agree with that definition?
You're saying to me that there's more in there and you're just reading me part of it?
I'm going to read you the second definition as well. But, the question
So you
is,
were
do you agree?
asking me about it without reading me the whole thing?
No, sir. It gives two definitions. You're familiar with dictionaries, I take it. Sometimes they have more than one definition of a term, correct?
Sometimes terms have more than one meaning, so it's
Right.
actually fairly appropriate that dictionaries would give the two different meanings. And generally, before you'd ask somebody if they agreed with the dictionary, you'd actually give them the benefit of reading them what's in the dictionary, not just a part of it.
Well, I'm reading you the first
Move to
definition.
strike the answer is non-responsive.
Reading the first definition, I ask you if you agree with that definition.
I don't think it's the only definition.
But is that an accurate definition?
I'd like to hear what the other...
I'll read it to you. The second definition is an application that supplants its competition. Now let me go back and read you the first definition again, now that you've heard both of them. The first definition reads as follows. An application of such popularity and widespread standardization that fuels sales of the hardware platform or operating system for which it was written.
Yeah, I already told you my definition of killer app is a very popular application.
Is this definition accurate?
I told you when I use the term killer application, in particular when I use it in a piece of email, what I mean by it. I'm sure there's people...
No, I understand you've told me that. There's another question on the table now. Do you have any disagreement with this definition?
I think most people, when they use the word killer app, are not necessarily tying it to any relationship to hardware.
What about a relationship to an operating system?
Usually they're just talking about it being a very popular application. I certainly know of things that have been referred to as killer applications that haven't driven hardware sales or operating system
What
sales.
other applications would you identify as being killer applications?
A flight simulator.
Any others?
Well, you always have to take a year in a context for those things. For example, when desktop publishing software became popular in the 1980s, many people referred to it that way. When people were talking about interactive TV, they thought video on demand would be a killer application, and something went wrong because the whole thing never caught on. But people had been using that term, the idea of letting people watch movies, as something that would be extremely popular.
In what time frame was the web browser a killer application?
I think web browsers became very popular between 95 and 97. They became very popular.
So at that point in time, web browser was, in your definition, a killer application?
They were very popular, yeah.